Joining me now to discuss students returning to school is Dr. Carole Lieberman, a psychiatrist and a parenting expert. So, doctor, when we look at this latest debate regarding kids going back to school, I mean, a lot of them are already going back. Some of them are expected to go back this fall, but there is some pushback on that front. Do you think that it is plausible for some regions, I know it's not a one-size-fits-all thing, to go back to school?
I think it's very important that everybody makes an effort to have kids go back to school. You know, this isn't to say there can be no guarantee, of course, that the kids aren't going to get COVID, but there are statistics that show that they get it at a much lower rate, they transmit it at a much lower rate, and in fact, they get flu a lot more easily and die from flu a lot more easily, and we don't close the schools when there's the flu season.
And when we talk about this issue, too, I think that it's important to weigh what happens if we don't send kids back to school. I understand that there are public health elements to this. In fact, that's the primary argument that a lot of people are having in the media. But there's also what happens if you don't send, especially a younger kid, back to whether it's preschool or kindergarten, whatever it may be. Is there evidence to suggest that that really is a disservice to their development?
Yes, it is. I mean, you know, people don't think about that. They think, oh, I have to protect my kids. Really, it's a lot of the teachers who are trying to put the kibosh on going back to school. But what has been happening to kids during all these months that they've been in lockdown and not going to school has been incredibly disastrous for them, not only on an educational level, but on a psychological level and social level. Educationally, you know, I treat a lot of kids and families, so I have seen firsthand how kids are dropping out, so to speak. They've lost their enthusiasm for learning. They don't pay attention to the Zoom classes. They sleep through them. They watch television. They play violent video games. All of these things are bad. They go on social media where they get bullied or they get jealous over the lives that other kids seem to have, you know, talk about the great lives they have. All of these things during all of these months have been very, very deleterious. So it's not, you have to weigh the risks. And, you know, it's just so important for them. Educationally, besides socially, educationally, what has been happening because they've been dropping out is that now there is this hole in the foundation of their education. So kids have been promoted to the next grade without knowing half of the year, at least half, and they forgot what they learned in the first half. And now we're going to build on that with this hole, this weakness in the foundation of their education. It's not going to go well for the rest of their education.
And I think you bring up an interesting point, too, and it's the idea that the conversation isn't always full when we have it. So many times we talk about public health versus the education of a child, and that is very important. But you also touched on some other things there, and it's the idea that right now suicide rates are going up. Overdose rates are going up. I mean, there's evidence to suggest that the opioid epidemic, which we were making progress on, is returning back to its original numbers because a lot of people aren't going back to work. They're stuck at home. They don't really have anything to look forward to at this point forward. So when we look at all of these things together, do you think that the conversations that we're having, I understand that they have to be public health oriented, but do you think that we're missing out a lot of the other conversations?
Yes, you know, just like from the beginning of this pandemic, where psychological factors haven't really been addressed, you know, it's all about lockdown and so on, and not the psychological impact of lockdown. Same thing with education. We're not looking at what the psychological and as I was saying, educational impact is. So it's not just, it's not like there's no harm happening to kids who have been out of school and who will have more harm come to them if they continue to be out of school. There are many things that they can do in school, you know. There are schools where they can do some classes, I mean, depending upon the weather, they can do some classes outside. They can do things where they make masks into fun projects. I mean, obviously, there have to be safety protocols in place, you know, not just, but kids just, when kids see each other, I mean, that itself would be such, will change their whole attitude, will make them, lighten them up, will give them much more enthusiasm. And of course, you know, it's so different when a teacher is standing in front of you than when you're supposed to be tuning into a Zoom session. There's just no question about that. So I think we have to try it. Of course, there are lots of things to do, you know, to make it safer, and we do need to do those things. But we have to remember also child abuse. Another big statistic is it's teachers and school psychologists and school counselors who pick up on child abuse. And there have been kids now in lockdown for all these months who have been being abused in secret, and we need to bring them out of the shadows and have them get help.
Yeah, I mean, it's a horrible reality to even think about, but it's a reality nonetheless. And I think a lot of times people like to get politics in the way of actual substantive change. I think that it's very important for people to remember, yes, sure, there may be political consequences, but at the end of the day, the children are the priority. Parents and teachers, they come next. Then we can talk about politics. But I think for the time being, results are what we should be looking for at this time. Dr. Carole Lieberman, I appreciate you coming on and breaking down this issue. Thank you.